slide or next question. At 28, I say, so the point is that you can only have knowledge in the now. Yes. And this is also something I haven't explained too much. And I just basically said it rather than just explaining it deeper, right? Maybe I need to make a follow-up on knowledge and explain exactly how it works. And the sort of acceptance or the necessity of accepting your conclusions. If this is what follows from my philosophy, then I goddamn have to follow it. I can't just say, oh, I don't like that conclusion, I have to figure something else out. No. If whenever I see that in people's philosophy, and it's more common than you might think, I'm like, okay, so you have an agenda, right? I avoid agendas at all costs. In fact, I'm so adventurous in my philosophy that I actually like the idea of finding completely new ideas, but reasoning my way to them by taking this 360 view of things as best as I can, right? And I come up with some completely left field ideas, and you're going to see some interesting in my next part, right? Which is about, well, I called it humanology, but I think as individuality is a better term, but maybe time will tell, right? Some reasoning that is both, it's a new area in a way, right? But it's also an approach I have never seen anybody not quite this way, right? So, and I actually, I'm very, it's like, if I find something that seems to work, but it's different, it's kind of exciting for me. While I suppose that a lot of other people might think, oh, I better not go there. I'm not allowed by mommy. Or I bring out mommy a lot, right? But mummies have a lot more power than you might think, right? Not you, Johnny, in particular, but those over there, right? So how far did I get? Yeah. However, in common use, no. The point is, you can only have knowledge in the now. Maybe I should clarify before we go to the question. Because I need to have a cognition. In my opinion, if we deal with time as an abstraction, it's only time is sliced up in three parts in my opinion. There's the now, or this moment, you could say. Then there's the past and the future. The past is made up of memories. The now is made up of a composition of cognitions. All my experience is cognized, right? Except maybe for my pain and my hunger, and but the deepest levels are all cognized. So there's a map of cognition, right? That's with what I suppose Bernardo Kastrup calls his dashboard. And then there's the future, which is also an imagination, right? And bringing these three parts together is not a good idea, because they are different categories. The most far-fetched one is fabulating about the future. The past is at least made up of some memories that I don't necessarily have control over whether or not I have, but I have them. And by having memory, I think that the extension between these memories is what is known as time, or is the notion of time. I speculated on this before, and this is why I have time, the notion of time, because my memory stretches out the placement of these memories on a string of time. What it actually is, I can't get to, I think, but at least I have the notion of this spatial differentiation. If they're all slammed together, they will sort of be in the now, but because they're sort of stretched out backwards using time as a mental construct of some kind, then I have a notion of time. And then I can extend that time into the future by imagination, right? And this is why both Einstein used time and space together, I think, as space-time. And the reason why we have an idea that we are moving through time, we're not moving anywhere, right? We just have a memory and an imagination. What I have is what I have now. That I saw my car yesterday is not the same quality of insight as I'm looking at my car now. So if they're different quality or level of insight, or whatever you want to call it, then both of them cannot be knowledge. And I think it makes sense to say the deepest insight must be knowledge. It's not like I'm not invalidating memories, anything like that. They're just not knowledge. Knowledge is the deepest one. All the other ones need to be called something different. What then you can want to call them, I don't know. But because it seems we only have this term called knowledge, people call everything knowledge because they're lacking a differentiation of terms. So they're lumping all categories together as they see fit, and then basically everything becomes knowledge, and then we're no further, right? But it also makes sense to make a particular aspect knowledge, and that aspect is cognition, because of its on-off quality. And in order to communicate and various shit, it's a good idea to do it, but I'll get back to that, right? I have talked about it before, but I'll be more clear in some of the next parts. Okay, so Johnny says, however, in common usage, to know almost never refers to present experience, but rather to memories of past experiences. Yeah, and that's a big problem. Well, I have a memory, therefore I know it. What? You need to have the experience in order to have the memory, right? So if the direct experience is not knowledge, then how can the memory of it become knowledge? Or was it knowledge when you experienced it, which is what I'm saying, but it stays knowledge as it become a memory? I think that's a bit of a invalid leap. But you might have your own philosophy about this, because a memory might be flawed, right? I mean, there might be something going on in what is known as memory that skews with whatever, right? I don't know. But if I have the direct experience or cognition of elephant, then I know elephant, right? It can't be any deeper than that, because I have disqualified qualia qualia are deeper, but cognitions are more precise and useful. So that's why, right? You could say you can't have the cognitions without the qualia. Yes, exactly. And then the qualia are deeper. Fine, I misspoke there, right? But the cognitions are there for precision. And it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, nobody does it this way, and I don't understand why nobody has come up with that idea before, because it's kind of straightforward. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult. You might not like it. And fair enough. I mean, if you have a better way of doing it, or a different way that might be equally good, or have something to it, I don't know how to put it, but let me know. I mean, I'm open for anything, basically, right? But you're right. I know, and that's also the whole foundation for education. You're having this knowledge you have read somewhere, and you're pouring it into somebody's head, right? And they have to regurgitate in order to tell you that they know it. It's stupid. It's not knowledge. I'm not saying it's not useful to know Newton's law, but it's not knowledge. And Newton's law in itself cannot be knowledge. So from that standpoint alone, it can't be knowledge, no matter, even if you're a Newton, right? I imagine that if I asked you, do you know Stanley Kubrick? You'd answer, yes. No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I would not. Without feeling the need to exhume his corpse. Yeah, well, I understand, but don't straw man me, mate. I know you're trying to trick me a bit, right? Fair enough. I can take it. But no, I would never say that I know Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, right? If I saw a man standing here next to me, and this man said, I'm Stanley Kubrick, and he's about to say, I will have to say, well, then I know Stanley Kubrick. But I might start to communicate and say, are you the same Stanley Kubrick who made The Shining? Or directed The Shining? And he said, yes, I am. Okay. But you don't have the beard. Or you mean, at some point, I would know that there's a man saying he's Stanley Kubrick. But Stanley Kubrick is not an attribute of the, it's not a qualia of the cognition. So in that sense, I can't know Stanley Kubrick because that's a label somebody invented. His mommy, possibly again, the mummies, right? So careful, right? If somebody says, I am a policeman, but what does that mean? Oh, but you have the clothes on. Oh, so when you have that clothes on, of course, how could I be in doubt? Because blue clothes, right? Anybody can take on some blue clothes. That doesn't make them something, right? They can, I can call myself Stanley Kubrick. That doesn't make me Stanley Kubrick, right? And Stanley Kubrick could be an imposter who calls himself Stanley Kubrick, but he's actually Shirley MacLaine, right? How would you know? But you can't know, right? Because it's not knowledge. So you have to stick with what you know, so to say, right? So but I'm trying to avoid a circular reasoning here. No, I wouldn't exhume him. Let him rest in peace, right? And by the way, there's conspiracies about whether or not he actually died a normal, peaceful, or a normal death, or whether or not he was whacked by those who were not really interested in his deeper dive into secret societies in the 99 movie Eyes Wide Shut, right? So I'm sort of on the fence on that one, right? Okay, back on track. If the different meaning is an intentional choice, you should probably provide a reason for it. But I just gave you, I just created 3 slides of philosophy where I give you my reason for choosing it. Is that not good enough? It's not my fault that somebody has a skewed idea of knowledge. But I also sense that because people are using this term, right? People are using the term objective and knowledge and truth left and right. My philosophy will take completely care of those terms. And again, there's something about this language barrier that is, I could make up my own terms that would be very precise to me at least, but I wouldn't be able to explain them because there's nothing I could call, well, and this is what I will define as Gokti Gobakti. And then you would say, what the hell is Gokti Bokti, right? Well, it's, okay, then I would have to use some terms you know. So you mean knowledge? Well, yeah. Well, why didn't you use the term knowledge? Well, so no, I don't need to explain it because the whole philosophy is an explanation. The terms I use are just describing various important steps in my philosophy, and sometimes I choose to use a term that has already been used and is being used a lot, and to the best of my understanding, actually are being used to describe that which I describe, or just take control of the definition, which is needed, in my opinion. If you don't have a philosophy and you have not done epistemology, and you don't have a definition of knowledge, don't use the term knowledge. right? And it also, because this, well, I know it, so you should do as I say, right? It's this when you use the term knowledge, it's like your understanding is just upgraded to some higher level where you all of a sudden get license to do shit, right? But nobody has identified, and we're still battling with Plato on this. Justified true belief, right? And I'm not venting against you in general, right? And I mean, nobody can settle this. And my idea is, my thinking is that it's because they haven't done the philosophy needed to arrive at a definition. You can't just jump in the middle and then start defining, because all these definitions reach back to a more fundamental thing. And if you haven't done these fundamental things, you can't define anything. And that's why most definitions, if not all definitions, maybe except mine, right? They're dysfunctional. They don't work. There are holes in them, and they need clarification and a foundation and so on, right? Your definition seems in fact more in line with to recognize, which however is not exactly a synonym to cognize. So perhaps I've misunderstood something. Could you clarify? Well, yeah, that's what I'll try. Well, one could go into ideas of how you develop cognition and so on. A baby born, spewed out of its mother or the womb, right? And is open its eyes, and then everything is just elephants and everything is ready and so on. I don't necessarily think that's what's going on. But without going deeper into that, I do have a few thoughts about it, right? But at some point, you're able to cognize elephant, and you can actually develop a cognition of elephant, at least to some extent, without actually ever seeing an elephant. You can see a picture of it, and you can see videos of it, and then you sort of, I don't think I ever seen, I'm not sure, a hyena. Maybe I've seen it in a zoo once, but there could be animals when I think about it, I have actually never seen. But I still have a recollection of the cognition, right? But what I would say the difference between cognition and recognition is, it's when you recognize, then you recognize a particular cognition that you've had before, right? You have a memory of that particular elephant you saw yesterday, and you want to show that to your wife or your child, right? So I have to find that particular elephant once again, because this elephant my boy needs to see, right? My daughter or my son needs to see, my children needs to see. So I'm dragging them along to the zoo or whatever, right? Or the savannah, and going, look, oh, there it is. I recognize this one, right? I recognize the same cognition. I mean, it's quite important, right? I want to recognize my car. Recognize is more specific. It's a particular instance of a given concept. There are not just a car. There are lots of different cars. They're all cars, but they're different color, shape, and size, and so on, right? So I need to find my car, not just any car, right? So I need to recognize my car. And this based on further delineations of shapes and sizes and colors and sounds and whatever, right? You might find a car where the key fits and whatever, and then when you start it, it sounds differently. You might say, there's something wrong with the motor. You might also say, fuck, this is not my car, right? So, okay. I'm also starting to wonder if I've misunderstood what you mean by cognition. Okay, well I hope it's pretty clear, but just because it's clear to me doesn't necessarily mean that it's clear to everybody else. Do you see elephant as a kind of data structure or representation that specifies which qualia must be present in order to say that X is an elephant? Or do you mean the actual act in the present moment of realizing that X is an elephant? I'm not realizing that. I'm not reasoning my way to elephant. When I experience elephant, I experience elephant. I cognize elephant, maybe I should say, right? It's just that at least there's something going on. And that particularity going on, that is what I call elephant. And a similar thing could be happening, going on, that I would call beaver. And you might recognize the same kind of thing going on. Cognition is maybe a simplified description of what is going on. I have done some videos in the past, and it goes all the way back to when I was only doing this in Danish. But yes, and in my one of my earlier book attempts on this, I had a fairly large chapter on cognition and how that works, or how I choose to see it. As I said that, let me try to give an overview of it then. That I think a way to address the idea of geometry and so on is that these forms, which are the concepts that are used to cognize, for instance, elephant, are made of circles and squares and cubes and pyramids and whatever. These kinds of fundamental shapes, right? I'm just mentioning some, I don't know which one or and so on, right? There might be complex. A pyramid is made up of 4 triangles and a square, whatever, right? So there might be more to it, right? But you know, geometry. I think geometry is the language of the forms, or the concepts, you could call them, right? And these concepts are that which is used to cognize, for instance, elephant. There's a whole back catalog of these forms. Some of them are not being used regularly. Some of them are being used all the time, maybe, right? You look at the sky and you see a cloud, and it's a cloud, right? Every day, maybe, right? I think that you can cognize something without colors if you have the contours of something, right? I could draw a very fine line and some ears and a trunk, what looks like a trunk, and you say that's an elephant. So you're basically cognizing an elephant based on this. I've seen some drawings when I was younger, very, very, very simple drawings, where you only have, you know, a curved line and something, and you can see it's a face, right? So you're basically cognized face, but there are not really any colors. There's nothing else, and there's basically nothing. And yet, and I think there's a tendency to cognize everything, even if it's wrong. But I can't tell you if it's wrong, because I only have that. Mind doesn't say, okay, you have to decide whether or not this is an elephant or a rhinoceros, right? It's either or, right? So I think the mind, let's call it mind, the phenomenal realm, there's something going on that you know, there's some subconscious shit, like shit going on together with the phenomena that I don't have access to, but that influences my phenomena from the inside, so to say, my psychology, whatever, all these sort of hidden things in the mind, right? Mind is sort of a catch-all term for all that could possibly be going on inside, right? So I think that these shapes are important, but you can't have shapes without having colors. If you go back, if you take sort of an evolutionary approach, which is possibly not valid, but you know, let's say we have done all the philosophy and doing science and so on, right? You could maybe say, well, if it has evolved that way, it would be more likely that concepts were developed from differentiation between layers of color, right? I differentiate this iPad I have here on my table because it's a different color from the cloth on my table. But if it was the same color, it would be more, I wouldn't as easily, at least, cognize it, and that would also be a kind of camouflage, right? The whole idea of camouflage is looking like the background, right? So because there are delineations of blemishes of color, these delineations becomes the shapes. And these shapes are recognized using the geometry of the forms, right? Or the concepts. I don't know whether to call it forms or concepts, but it's the same thing I'm referring to. So, because it needs these colors to be there, these colors have also become a part of the identification or maybe recognition, as I dealt with before in your question, in order to differentiate between this elephant, that elephant, and the elephant over there, right? If I see them again alone, I can't say it's an over there elephant because there's only that one. But I could recognize it because its shape is different, or the color is different, or whatever, right? Maybe sound, or maybe taste if I wanna take a bite, right? So it's I think there's also a kind of lock-in effect. Then if you first have impressed these forms on your the cognitive apparatus, right? They don't change that easily. So even if the colors change, the cognition doesn't change. I can have a pink elephant and I still identified it as an elephant. I just said it was a pink elephant. So I must have cognized elephant. But because it's pink, it doesn't change that I'm cognizing elephant. So yes, the colors have a variation of importance in the identification, but it's more the shape that does it, I think, than the color. But in order to spot the elephant, it's actually more important that the background or the contours, colors of the contours and the colors of the thing you might cognize and its background stand off from each other to create the contours, right? So that's why you can easily see a pink elephant because there's a blue background. But if there's a pink background and a pink elephant, you might not recognize it or cognize it, right? So, I don't understand about data structure or representation that specifies which qualia. That I can't specify what needs to be there. In my opinion, you can oftentimes cognize something, and I mean, you can cognize. I could draw an elephant or something that resembles an elephant. Maybe I'm not particularly good at drawing, but you know, I'm not too bad either. Right? I might be able to do something, and I could say I cognize elephant, but it's not a real elephant because there might be something missing, right? There might be. It's not big enough. It doesn't have the right color. It's a piece of paper. That is not what I normally mean. So you can cognize it. That's why you can see a movie or look at art and experience some cognitions, but they are not the real thing, or they are not the kind of cognition that strikes fear into you. If that's what it does, right? You can see a picture of a tiger on the wall and you don't freak out, right? But if a tiger was walking through your living room, I mean, I would go ballistic, right? I don't know what the hell I would do. I would freeze and then, you know, can I get out the window? I don't know, right? And I say, I don't know, sometimes you end up doom scrolling on Twitter or something like that. I saw some videos of cats getting, I think it was bears and wolves. People have put their children out on the porch, and then in landish, what's it called, open areas out in the country. You know, sometimes an alligator comes walking up, or a bear, or a wolf or something, and then their cat went ballistic on its ass. And if there's something bears don't like, it's cats. for some reason. Maybe it's the soft nose or whatever, right? And a cat with his claws, I don't know, but they move out as fast as they hear the cat coming, right? And the cat is completely mental, right? It's like a 20th or a 100th the size of a bear, right? And yet it can, wipe off and the kid is just sitting there. That looks funny. So don't leave your children alone on the porch with a cat, even if you have a cat, right? So why did I talk about that? I don't want to, and that's also, I don't need to explain. I don't need to explain a cognition in order to deal with it. As long as it's there, I expect it to be there. So be it, right? And I'm just dealing with it. I don't want to throw sort of nerddom at explaining them, because it doesn't change that they're there. It's more important what I do about them than explaining why they're there. That's also one of these nerdish approaches to philosophy, and in particular metaphysics. I need to explain everything. But how do you do that? Why do I need some approach, some data structure? I mean, I don't care what the hell is going on, right? What I care about is what the hell do I do about it, right? So, okay. According to the dictionary, well, we're doing philosophy here, mate, right? I mean, I don't care about your dictionaries. I mean, there's no getting around. There's no secondary path. There's no plan B. I guess, my matrix, I call that a plan B, but that's much more joking. I was joking about it, right? There's no, okay, if I end up, I don't know what to do with my philosophy now. I'll grab my dictionary or whatever, right? That's not, you have to think it. You can't grab a dictionary, because that's colors, sounds. Okay, that's a color, therefore philosophy. No. But if we want to be rigorous, cognition as act necessary requires a cognition as representation to perform the pattern matching the present experience, so they could really have different names. I'm not sure I understand that. You have to clarify. I'll try again. If we want, you mean if I want, okay, to be rigorous, cognition as act necessarily required a cognition as representation. I don't know what you mean by cognition as act. I don't understand your question. Maybe I could force myself to come to some understanding, but I might misinterpret. So please clarify what you mean and present it in a more approachable manner, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what cognition as act means. Okay, even if it is, even if it is, even if you could prove that this is circular, then I would, I would have to establish an action that says, if this is circular, I'm going to ignore. Yeah, well, it's like, if my argument to get on from solipsism is circular, then I don't have anything. But I refuse to stay in solipsism. So until further notice, I would have to say, from this point on, until I have something better, if it's proven without beyond doubt that this is circular, I will have to just do it anyway and see how it works. This is my choice. You don't have to do it, right? But as I pointed out, I don't think it's circular. But I'm not, it's not like it's a crystal clear argument as such. But I'm trying to sit from the inside watching my my experiences, right? I haven't created an external world to explain why it does it. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't want to explain my cognitions, because I can't, right? And I just sit here and choose to, when I see that, I'll do this. When I see that, I'll do that. That's all I do. I might do some thinking here that imagine an external world, but I'm just saying, okay, I'm not telling anybody what is behind the colors and so on, but when I see that, or I cognize that, I'll do that, to simplify it very much, right? So I don't think there's circularity in it. But if there's a little circularity, it means it's circular. You can have a little circularity. That's stupid, right? But it's just, I'm not, I'm not have that feeling that this is just a clean-cut argument, right? But I'm just making sure that I'm not just pretending to go there because that couldn't be a problem, because I need it to be possible, and then I'm just downplaying potential problems, right? I'm just mentioning it for the sake of, what's the term? Honesty, maybe, right? And Johnny writes, no, master, after all these teachings, you of all people can enter to the dark side of the force. I asked for it. I use the Star Wars, references, right? But you know what? I have altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further. I like your humor. A potential problem / paradox might be this: the axioms of the external world play an important role in the rationale of your definition, yet they don't appear in the final result of the definition itself. Yeah. Yeah, you can say, I take sort of a mental venture and get back and say, I'm going to define something that doesn't reference that little thing I just did. I guess that's what this is kind of what I just said before. I'm just, but I don't want to not disclose it, because then there's a sort of a bit of philosophy that is sort of secret in order to avoid, being labeled as circular, right? So I need to, I'm just trying to be as open as I can, because if it's circular, it would be nice to be clear on it, right? And maybe I need to dig further in and find out how to do it without making it circular. So sometimes it's like, just because the argument that I could come up with sounds like it's circular doesn't mean necessarily there isn't a better argument hiding somewhere that actually clarifies it, and or maybe also point out why something else might look circular. See? So it's sort of maybe the weakest spot, but then it's a very, very difficult spot for anybody, right? So yeah, maybe I should leave it at that, right? The definition rests solely on cognitions which were already formed from the very first stage. Yeah, but it's the same thinking as I was doing, right? You could have stated it even before considering the possibility of an external world, even if you were a substance. Well, yeah, what's this? How do you say that? Two souls, one thought, or something like. We are on the completely same plane here, right? You had actually thought out the same as I just explained in a few slides earlier, right? So great stuff, Johnny. Isometric. I suppose you are into, we have to have measuring standards here, right? It's probably not dick measuring, is it? But how was it? Was it Protagoras who supposedly said man is the measure of all things, right? Okay. Isometric penises. With that said, isometric penises play best. And we have a saying in Denmark that equal children plays best, right? So, I don't know where I'm going, right? We are closing in on the 1 hour mark. I hope you enjoyed this causation. What's it called? When you just, a little, a little talk and reflection on a few questions by Johnny Isometric, which are always great to ponder about, and you have a very good talent in pointing out potential weaknesses, at least, right? And maybe actual weakness of my thinking, and that is hugely valuable to me. I really like it. So thank you very much, and I hope you others enjoy, and let me have your questions. I'm not going to chase you away, right? So with that said, please share, like, and subscribe, all the good stuff, right? Please. So have a nice day. See you in the next one.